Alright, so we're briefly interrupting the remake theme that's been going on for this one that was specifically requested. So, and interestingly enough, I was just gonna do them like normal. I was gonna like shoot this right after I did the Manchurian Candidate one that just went out. But then I remembered that not only was I coming here, but you had mentioned that you watched both of these recently.
Yeah, it's been within the last like 2 months.
So it was like, okay, let's see how this could go as like a joint effort. Because I do remember that we were both there when we saw the first movie. 'Cause I was trying to remember the order of events, but for some reason, me, you, and Dad saw the first movie in the theater in 2001. I think that's just when we were going regularly, and I think we had pretty much seen everything else. So we were just like, let's see what this... I really cannot remember the decision-making process of how the three of us ended up in Legally Blonde, but I feel like I remember all three of us liking it. And liking it a lot more than we thought we would.
Yeah. Did you notice, too, that we did this theme of a female lawyer right in the middle of She-Hulk?
Oh, no, that didn't occur to me.
Oh, man.
So it's just I still haven't started She-Hulk yet, but...
You should. Madison. Madison, everybody. I'm not going to spoil her little phrase.
But, do you remember being surprised as far as, like, what it was about? Because I feel like the marketing was pretty much all about, oh, it's a dumb blonde doing a not dumb thing, but the whole premise is that she's not a dumb blonde.
Dude, so when you said that the marketing is confusing, you know what it kind of made me think of? And hear me out on this before you automatically shoot this down. But it's kind of like Full Metal Jacket. The previews pretty much showed the first half of the movie. What's everybody think of when they think Full Metal Jacket? Everything in the first half of the movie.
The booty came.
So it's like you get into this whole other story after you've already wrapped up the preview stuff.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
A little bit of an invasion.
Hey, relax.
But yeah, that's the thing. Also, is I'm just completely gone now.
Relax, get down, dude.
Also, an irony to the cat's presence. I feel like this is a protest because of the entire second movie being devoted to the dog.
Yeah.
I remember being a bit controversial at the time.
Come over here, pal.
And how a lot of people found that a bit, really, that's the direction that we're going. Because this movie ended up being huge, and I believe the second one ended up being huge anyway, regardless. I think it made like $125 million or something.
I don't remember it being as huge. Like, I remember, like, the first one, like, everybody knew. And I feel like the second one, like, a lot of people obviously saw it, but nobody really talked about it like they did the first one.
Yeah, and none of the quotes really carried over either.
Mm-mm.
And anything that does is pretty much lifted from the first one.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, so I feel like the first one is a lot more, like, iconic. Lex.
Yeah, I know there was a lot of comparisons to, like, Clueless when it came out.
I forgot. He loves these tables. Yeah, I get the Clueless comparisons. But like you said, I think it's unfortunate that in the second one we kind of... I feel like the second one kind of forgot what got the first one to the dance to even be a second one.
Yeah, because we talked about the idea of the first one is that the whole concept is that she's set up to be a dumb blonde when she's actually really underestimated. Mm-hmm. That's one of the first things they set up with the whole thing of, like, the salesperson saying, you know, like, oh, nothing's better for business than a dumb blonde with daddy's plastic, and then she, like, calls her out immediately.
And I feel like in the second one they kind of do a retread with that with Regina King's character.
Yeah, but instead of making it like just a one-off scene that makes the point, the Regina King thing is an entire subplot.
Yeah.
And doesn't she feel a lot more oblivious in the second movie? Which
because like in the first one she knew what was going on around her. In the second one they do kind of... It's funny because the first one establishes that she's not dumb, but the second one seems to lean on the fact that she might be dumb. Yeah. Which is a really weird way to go. Instead of, like, usually when you do a sequel is to evolve a character, and I almost feel like we're devolving her.
Yeah, like, you could almost make the argument that maybe the events of the first movie make her too confident, but I don't think the second movie's characterization is that good.
No, it
Like,
feels like it feels like a character shift.
Yeah.
Like she still has like the drive and determination, but whereas in the first one she did it with her smarts, in the second one she did it by like charm and obliviousness.
Yeah. And I remembered, like I said, I remembered it being somewhat controversial that the second movie was about the dog, and people were like, "That's a weird direction to go." But I don't remember it having as bad of a reputation as it apparently does. Apparently it has, like, I think Entertainment Weekly did like a list of the 25 worst sequels ever, and it was on there.
Oh man, I don't know if I go that far.
And I didn't know this until I looked it up. Apparently, apart from Sing 2, which is just voiceover, and was just last year, she had such a bad experience on this that Witherspoon swore off sequels because of this movie.
Oh man.
And it's like, I didn't really put that together until, yeah, the only one she's done is Sing 2.
Yeah.
So
Because Monsters vs. Aliens screamed for a sequel and nothing ever came out. It was like a TV spinoff or something.
yeah. And I think it was said, like, even if they had done a sequel, that she just wouldn't have been involved. They would have had to go around her or recast her or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, I get it now that I've watched it back, but like I said, at the time I don't remember it having that bad of a reputation. It just kind of existed.
Yeah.
But then it's, even Lex is
Yeah.
very put off by it.
He knows what's up.
Also because it's about a dog, like we said. Could be off-putting to him as well. But I also think the second one feels a bit more... Isn't it kind of more slapsticky? Where the first one feels much more based on like clever writing and clever sort of character diversion and stuff like that.
Yeah, and there's like a mystery with the first one I think that helps too.
Yeah, where it's like we're actually going into a case of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
Even as sort of preposterous as that is, sort of plot-wise,
Mm-hmm.
it's still like, it makes for a decent movie as far as it having like a destination.
Like, and I think there's so many different places you could go with the sequel where like, you know, we could see her practicing law. Like, what if like the plot of the sequel was that she had to represent like this tough mob boss type dude?
Yeah.
Like something like that, like something with like abrasive people. I feel like you could have made a whole other set of jokes based on that, how she deals with like abrasive, rough people.
Yeah, because I mean, yeah, the whole going the Congress route sets up something like that. But then the execution is, you kind of feel like the execution isn't what they initially had in mind. Where it's like, it's clear there was a Mr. Smith thing going on they were trying to do.
Yeah.
I do think that's one of the few funny moments in the second movie is when she's on the phone with Luke Wilson, and they're both watching Mr. Smith at the same time, and he's trying to do a Jimmy Stewart impression, and she thinks it's Connery. He doesn't even correct her. He just says, "No." But
Dude, part of the fun of watching Luke Wilson though is how he reacts to situations. Old School's a great movie for that.
Yeah, do you think he's weirdly understanding of everything in the second movie? It's like, I feel like their relationship should not be in the good place that it's in. I mean, I kind of like that that's not another conflict, at least. Like, it almost feels like a subversion in itself, that he's not, like, getting irritated and saying, like, oh, why don't you put me before all this other stuff or whatever. He's just literally there to say yes to everything.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't tell if I love that or hate that, or it's a little bit of both. But how do you think they develop in the first movie? Does it feel relatively sudden, or does that flow as well? Because it feels like, because the first movie is relatively short, for a movie that has so much happen in it, it does feel like everything's kind of on fast forward.
Yeah.
Which in a way is obviously good, because you don't want a comedy to be like really dragged out and like start to take itself too seriously. But it did feel like some things were a bit quick. Like I always remember, maybe it's because I was like 10 when the first one came out, but I remember the court case being significantly longer when I was a kid. And now it feels like it wraps up in like 5 minutes.
But we also, I mean, within the story, we don't really know how much time has passed.
Yeah.
Like for us, their romance has been 30 to 40 minutes. In movie time, that could be over the space of 6 to 7 months.
Yeah, and technically most of their relationship happens in the 2-year jump we get from the where it ends and then when we get the epilogue.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where most of that relationship was.
Yeah.
I do think it's a nice intro though when he's kind of giving her when he's giving her like the inside scoop on how the teachers, how to react to them and how they, teach their classes and all that. Despite the fact that he does, I was gonna say he looks a bit old to be where he is in college, but then at the same time we just mentioned old school, so that.
Yeah, and he's like a grad student, like.
Yeah.
And it takes a long time to get your law degree, and I mean, by the second one, he has, if I remember right, he has his own firm.
I think so. They mentioned so many things just really quickly in passing. There's so many things in the first movie that should carry over to the second one, and they either don't at all, or they're just very briefly mentioned in passing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember the UPS guy. Like, how that was a whole thing. Like, that was Jennifer Coolidge's whole arc in the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the epilogue, it says, like, and they got married and they had a kid that they named Elle. We see, like, in the second movie, we see that kid once, and the UPS guy shows up at the very, very end.
Mm-hmm.
And for a pretty ridiculous joke.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, the whole movie, for the second movie, you're thinking, like, where did her family go?
Yeah.
Like, what happened? It's like, it's almost sad.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, okay, they're there, they just were apparently not supposed to care anymore.
They were over it.
Yeah, but what's really interesting is have you ever gone back and watched Legal Eagle that I told you about?
No.
The lawyer with the YouTube channel that like watches movies and talks about their real.
I remember you talking about that. I've never watched it.
Yeah, so naturally he did this one.
Mm-hmm.
And I was interested to find some of the stuff that he found like really accurate. Like I guess everything involving the LSAT, the test she has to take, is pretty accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently one thing that he really singled out was when her friends are helping her, but where like they're working out really loudly while she's taking the test. Apparently that's like a really good strategy because it like helps you zone in and keep distractions out of your mindset and out of your vision. And it's like because like at first I just thought her friends were being obnoxious, but apparently it was like a whole method.
I feel like this being so accurate is the equivalent of when everybody found out that the most accurate hospital show is Scrubs.
Yeah, and if you want to talk courtroom movies, My Cousin Vinny's accuracy is always really high.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I always found that interesting that I'm never quite sure how we're supposed to gauge her friends. Because it's like in this moment when they're helping her with her test, it's like this really touching thing. It's like they seem like they have this inseparable bond. But then like the second she goes to school, it's like they just don't give a shit about her anymore. Like there's that whole scene devoted to the one girl's trying on wedding dresses and Elena Ubach's talking about her bangs and she's trying to talk about like I'm having some problems here and just nobody's listening and she just has to hang up.
Yeah.
And then the scene after that where she helps Jennifer Coolidge out with the dog and when Jennifer Coolidge thanks her, there's like that she gives her that longing look. Like it's like the first time she's ever been thanked in her life and it's like is this the first time she felt like she's had a real friend? That's what that moment feels like, but at the same time it's like her friends were great when she was there with them.
I think that's what it's trying to say is that they're good friends, but they're not good friends for that situation. They're the fun friends. Like she can have fun with them, have a good time, but if there's a problem that needs to be discussed, that's not the best option.
Yeah, because it is to my understanding that apparently, what are their names? Margot and Serena were supposed to only be in like one of the first scenes of the second movie. And then because they were like, oh no, we could do more with them, they were literally being written in like as filming was happening. So you kind of get this sense that they're kind of shoehorned into the second movie.
Yeah, they almost kind of are like a third wheel with the plot.
Yeah, and especially you can tell in that moment where like everybody kind of just shows up all at the same time. Like Jennifer Coolidge kind of comes more into the story then. And it's, yeah, there's a whole lot of mess going on with the second movie. I kind of feel like I'm afraid we're going to get too wrapped up in talking about how much we don't care for the second movie and how much the second movie really dropped the ball. But I do also think the good stuff from the first movie also needs to be as highlighted. Like, the whole... What do you think of like when we talk about having antagonists, where we have Regina King in this one and ultimately Sally Field, the whole Selma Blair storyline, and what I think one of my favorite lines in the movie is when they're trying to determine if Selma Blair is as attractive as she is or not, and Elle's line is, "She's not completely unfortunate looking." It's like that's probably a pretty perfect way to describe Selma Blair, wouldn't you say?
I would say so.
I mean, I don't want to say that I would, that I think one is more attractive than the other, but I mean, I'm like madly in love with Reese Witherspoon in general, which is gonna help how you feel about these movies in general, because I could see if you go into this not a Witherspoon fan, you're probably not gonna like Elle Woods either.
Was this your introduction to Reese Witherspoon?
I want to say it was this. Funny enough, even though it's practically a cameo, I think Little Nicky was the year before this. It might have been that. Maybe. I feel like there has to have been something else, but maybe there wasn't.
I mean, back then, I mean, you weren't watching like Fear or Man in the Moon or anything
Freeway.
like that. Or Freeway.
I only earlier this year was the first time I saw Overnight Delivery with her and Paul Rudd.
Oh man.
So yeah, maybe it was Little Nicky and then this probably. But it feels like there should definitely be more, but maybe not, because I would have only been 10 at the time.
No, because I feel like after that's when she hit her strides. That was like Sweet Home Alabama, and her boom kind of started with this.
Yeah. Well, Election was 2 years
Tracy
before.
Flick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Election, something else I saw later in life, which makes sense, because Election's fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is basically like the really toned down PG-13 Tracy Flick, essentially, isn't she?
More likable.
Yeah.
Because Tracy Flick's a little shrewd.
Yeah, Tracy Flick never has fun that I remember. I mean, she has fun in her own kind of sadistic way, I guess.
Yeah.
But not like,
She would like give Real Fun the finger.
Yeah. And that's great also because of the range that this character came only 2 years after Tracy Flick. And then by the time we get to the second, like we say all these bad things about the second movie and how much she apparently doesn't like the second movie, and it's like, thankfully for her Oscar was only 2 years after that. So, I think I also read somewhere that she's wearing her hair looks different in the second movie, which I had always kind of noticed, and I only recently learned apparently it's because she had to wear wigs because she had the Sweet Home Alabama haircut at the time.
Oh.
Which is also funny because Marilyn Rice Cub is in both of those movies. But yeah, Marilyn Rice Cub, who gets the played out joke in the second movie where it's like everybody gets like a makeover, and then suddenly like everybody's attracted to Marilyn Rice Cub even though she pretty much looks exactly like she did the whole movie. But it's like she just gets like a slight haircut and gets like a slow motion turn, and it's like she's supposed to be breathtaking now, and it's like she looks the same. But what are some other things that you like about the first movie?
I like that it's real easy to maybe have Elle make a bad decision or an unadvised decision, like to create extra conflict, and I like that we didn't go down that road. She's generally pretty level-headed, make good decisions. She even had to go up against the Victor Garber dilemma.
Victor Garber as Professor Me Too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just like that they didn't do that tired old trope. Like, she stayed pretty pure through the whole story. I think that helps her likability. I think it would have been out of character for her to do something like neglecting a friend or something like that.
Yeah, because you know what the writing did that's really impressive? Is they actually, like, use her vanity for, like, good. Like, because there's the whole idea where she has to relate to Ally Larder, and that sort of relationship that they have is going to be what really drives her to this case, also just on top of the general priority of the case itself.
And that's where you can draw the major line between the first and second one, because that was literally her using her smarts and working that out and figuring out a way to connect. Fast forward to the second one, she's trying to get a bill passed by being cute.
Yeah. Like the fact that the whole plot of the second movie hinges on the fact that she wants a dog to go to her wedding feels like, it doesn't quite feel like Elle Woods, it feels like a parody of Elle Woods.
Yeah.
But
Seems like something you would see in like a bad Freeburg Seltzer
oh god.
parody.
Yeah, because the other thing I was going to mention was one of the connections that she has to Ally Larder is the whole thing where Ally Larder's one alibi is that she was getting liposuction. And the fact that Elle can pretty much relate to something that vain having to be kept under wraps because of that vanity.
And that's a great example of where, you know, they could have done the tired trope where Elle revealed the secret and had to rebuild that relationship with Ally Larder. She kept it the whole way.
Yeah. And it's like...
She found a way around it.
Yeah, because I think she even has a line where it's like, if that one alibi not being able to be used is what ruins the case, then we're not very good at this. And it's like, well, that's like, it seems like she's making a dumb decision, but then it's always turned around by it's some sort of strategy. So she's able to be like vain like that, but typically vain characters are unlikable. But it's like she's like working around her own vanity while also totally embracing it. And it's like that takes really good writing to create a character like that.
Yeah, it would be so easy for her to be one misstep here and there, and you've got a pretty unlikable character.
Yeah. Which is I don't think she's unlikable in the second movie, but I feel like we're headed that direction. Where it's like we were talking about, where she just kind of seems more oblivious in the second movie also.
And it's like, and it comes from different places. Like, the conflict with her smarts in the first one was, like, nobody thought she wasn't taking anything serious except the ex-boyfriend. But, like, I lost my train of thought.
Well, while you come back to that, I will say that I do think it's funny. This could just be like a Hollywood gossip kind of thing, but I always found it very interesting that Matthew Davis plays Warner. I love that he even has a douchey tool name to go with his douchey toolness. that first shot of him walking through the door where he's in like the suit and the sunglasses, it's like you just know who this guy is. But the thing that was really funny was that the whole movie is her being devoted to winning his approval. And it's like, once again, this could just be a Hollywood gossip thing, but the story I always heard was that there was a bit of awkwardness on the set because Matthew Davis in real life had like a huge crush on her and tried asking her out. And she had to turn him down because she was with Ryan Phillippe at the time.
Oh, man.
And it's like how that's kind of the reverse of what's going on in the movie with their characters. I always found interesting. And it almost kind of adds something to their dynamic.
Yeah. I remember what I was going to say the first time. So in the first one, it's more of a battle of her showing, I'm smart enough to do this, you know, I can do this. Whereas in the second one, the whole conflict comes from, they just think that she doesn't take it seriously, which is a big difference. I feel like there's a big difference in underestimating someone versus accusing them of not taking it seriously.
Yeah.
I think there's a difference there. And I think that first conflict carries more meat. It carries more validation for her when she overcomes it.
Yeah. There is one scene that doesn't completely sit right, but I also feel like maybe I'm possibly overthinking it a little bit.
You're talking about the first one?
Yeah. First off, do you know who Oz Perkins is?
No.
He is the really dorky guy. The guy that answers the Aristotle question and then gets chewed out by Holland Taylor. He's like the dorkiest guy in the group.
Okay.
He's played by Oz Perkins, who is Anthony Perkins' son.
Oh, man, that's weird.
Who is now like a horror director. He had like a little bit part in Nope recently. There's a scene where he's asking this attractive girl out, and Elle witnesses this as she walks by, and the girl just starts berating him and says, "Why do you think I would ever go out with a loser like you?" And then Elle comes up and slaps him and pretends that she's an ex and that he's the most pleasure she's ever had. And then Elle walks away, and then that causes the girl to say, "So, you were asking me out, I think?" And it's like, that's a good joke. And it's like showing that Elle's using her power for good and making him look good and all that. But it's like, the way that girl was talking to him, why would he want her now? And it's like, I want to see the rest of that scene. I want to see him say, "You know what? No, not anymore."
None of this.
But we cut, so we don't really know how that went.
As Nicholas Angel would say, jog on. And he has to do the he has to take it the whole 9 yards.
And I do think one cliche that the movie does hit that's kind of annoying is when the Victor Garber scene happens and it turns into the misunderstanding thing with Selma Blair seeing something that ends up being something else, and we have to go through that whole thing. But it does kind of give Selma Blair like kind of that final arc where she like has to, you know, say that I haven't just misjudged Elle this time, I've misjudged Elle every time. And then she gets the full circle, which unfortunately feels like it's somewhat comes to a dead end because, like I was saying, there's so much stuff that seems like it should carry over to the sequel that doesn't. There's so many characters we just never see again in the second movie, including Selma Blair.
I feel like Selma Blair would have been a good ally.
Yeah, I think that's why I feel like that's missing so much. It's like, otherwise it'd be like, okay, whatever, we have new characters, but it's like, it would have been so easy to put her in it, I think.
See, in my hypothetical sequel where she has to represent like a tough guy or something, Selma Blair would have been great to like feed off of her.
Yeah.
In those scenes, like to maintain that friendship.
Yeah, because it seems like where she had those people to bounce off of in the first movie, the people she bounces off of in the second movie are just a revolving door.
Or hell, let's make it go a little deeper. What if Selma Blair was the prosecuting attorney?
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, because there'd be that respect, but they're enemies.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Admit it, you want to watch my movie more than the second one.
Yeah, because what am I thinking of? I'm thinking of A Few Good Men. The relationship between Cruise and Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
Despite being on the opposite sides.
Yeah, you could even have some fun with that with some A Few Good Men callbacks. You could have some fun with that.
Yeah, so many.
Because imagine Elle in her way being like, "You can't handle the truth," like. but she says it as the lawyer because like, it's an homage, not a ripoff.
Yeah, and it would have probably been a better direction to go than trying to do Mr. Smith.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to be really sincere when she gives that speech at the end. And it's like, when I see the speech at the end of the second movie, I feel like Sally Field's face is what most of us actually look like, rather than being inspired. Where it's like about the shampoo in her hair or something. I don't even remember exactly.
Yeah.
It was a mess.
Yeah.
But,
just do my story.
Yeah. But yeah, talking about the revolving door of characters in the second movie, where like, sometimes it's Newhart she can bounce off of. Sometimes it's Bruce McGill. I was saying before we started, I do think one of the funnier jokes of the second movie, even if it's low-hanging fruit, is, you know, the thought of a Republican congressman having a gay dog and it being a whole controversy. But the fact that it makes him completely flip his position's kind of weird. But I think maybe it's because we're so jaded by like politics today, where like everybody's so bullheaded. And it's like there's just no way this movie happens. No, I mean, I don't think in any universe this movie happens. But
dude, I have more tie over for my hypothetical sequel. The movie could start with her putting Victor Garber away.
Well, that could be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many ways where you could, because it seems to set up that the second movie starts directly after the first one. So you would think there would be more tie-ins.
Yeah.
But yeah. And honestly, you know what? It kind of disappoints me the most about the second movie is that I do think it's interesting to see her go from like one place and then go to a bigger place like Congress and then kind of seem like she's going up a ladder. Like, I actually like, if the second movie had succeeded in everything it was trying to do, the last shot would have been amazing, where Luke Wilson says, "Where do you want to live next?" and she looks at the White House. Like, that would have been an amazing sort of ending, and saying, like, seeing Elle go up the ladder. But this one's just, the second movie's just so fucking weird. That it doesn't feel like she gets anywhere.
Yeah.
And if anything, it's a huge step down, because her trying to succeed in law school is significantly bigger than trying to get a dog to her wedding.
Yeah.
Her trying to get a dog to her wedding would be like if Elle Woods started as a YouTube short.
Yeah. Dude, I have it. I am continuing to build the world of my hypothetical sequel. We're going to have to start doing videos just where I pitch hypothetical sequels. Okay, so here's the stage. The movie starts with her suing Victor Garber for sexual harassment, and she's representing herself, to get that nice lawyer moment out of the way, like, Elle's back, she's still good at what she does. She successfully sues. 6 months late, we cut to 6 months later. She has used the money to open her own practice, but like McConaughey in A Time to Kill, business has dried up. This big case comes along. Her confidence is a little shaken because she hasn't had any clients, and then when she comes up against Selma Blair, she respects her, but at the same time fears that Selma Blair will win the case and send her back to obscurity. There's your plot for Legally Blonde 2.
Yeah.
And then Luke Wilson could be there to build her back up. They could have some fun scenes where he's like quizzing her, and they like have a mock court set up, and she's like firing away, and he's like coaching her, like calling back to that relationship in the first movie where like he coached her through the professors. He could tell her about like Selma Blair's tells and things like that. Tell me this doesn't sound a lot more interesting.
The thing is that I don't think you're just like you're completely destroying the second movie without even talking about the second movie.
Because my ideas are so much better? Dude, Matt, that is so much more of an interesting movie, is it not?
So it's like, we need to try to get a whole... I already have a script I want to get to Reese Witherspoon, but it's like, we could get a hold of Reese Witherspoon and say, if you want to retcon Legally Blonde 2...
Yeah, this is how we should do it.
I mean, obviously it'll be, slightly more in the future, but, I mean, she still looks good and youthful. She could pass.
Yeah, it could work. It could work. Oh, man. Oh, man. See, this is the bad part is, I get these ideas, but you write. I couldn't put all this in a script. I can feed ideas. I can feed bullet points. I think you could even have a conflict at the end where, like, maybe a juror gets flirtatious and kind of acts like he's gonna, cast a vote based on how that goes. Well, no, I think we're jumping the shark there. I don't think we need that conflict.
Well, yeah, because the thing about it also is when you talk about the difference between the concept and the writing, is the idea that something where the first movie very much succeeds, which is you've got to have the great concept and the great, story beats, but it's also got to be funny the whole time. And that's where it gets really tricky. And it's like, one thing that could have saved the shitty plot of the second movie is if it was significantly funnier than it is. And instead we've got Bob Newhart saying "faux shizzle."
Yeah.
And that's just tragic.
Yeah. No, the best Bob Newhart cameo is Horrible Bosses. That's a great use of Bob Newhart.
And subverting how you think a character is going to be.
Yeah. Why not, if you want Bob Newhart in it and you want him to do some funny things, what if he was the judge in that trial with her and Selma Blair?
Yeah.
That would have been a good Bob Newhart cameo.
Yeah, because honestly, it's really early, isn't it? Where you see Bob Newhart's name in the credits, and you're like, oh, how are they going to utilize Bob Newhart? And the very first time we see him, he's dressed as a doorman. And before he even says a word, you just see him dressed as a doorman, and you're like, they're not going to utilize him very well. It's like, damn it, you can already tell. I will give the movie credit for something, and this is really weird and random. I don't know if it's because I remember seeing the trailer so many times so vividly, because you worked at the theater by the time this came out. It was very early in your tenure, I believe.
Probably.
2003.
Yeah.
And so I remember always seeing the trailer moment where Jennifer Coolidge says, "You look like the 4th of July. It makes me want to have a hot dog real bad."
Dude, that was in all the trailers.
So I swear to you, anytime I'm either eating a hot dog or it's literally the 4th of July, at some point I can hear Jennifer Coolidge in my head saying that line, regardless of how I feel about this movie. Honestly, when I watched it back again for the sake of this video, I hadn't remembered really anything at all, except that I knew that she went to Congress. That's about it.
Dude, you could bring back the elements too of Jennifer Coolidge and the friends in that scene where they're doing the mock courtroom. You could have the friends be in the jury, Jennifer Coolidge could be the opposing lawyer and yell out objection at the wrong times. Luke Wilson has to rein her in.
It's just... and the way you describe it, it's so weird how easy that would have been.
Yeah.
It was like handed to them.
Dude, I'm a nobody, and I just fucking set this whole thing up.
Yeah, like we were talking about.
I'm very proud of this idea.
and also talking about how like how it almost makes the first movie look restrained, where like we know the kind of character that Elle is, and so they decide to use jokes like her extracurricular activities are she was in a Ricky Martin video, or she does the video essay in the bikini and stuff like that. We're all grateful for that scene. But I think she had an Instagram post recently where she showed that she still fits into that bathing suit too.
Probably.
So, but before our minds completely strayed into the gutter. Oh shit, where was I going? Oh,
you went too far off the road.
It has to do with her wardrobe. The fact that that's how they play up the kind of character that Elle is. When we get to the second movie, and she's, you know, on her way to Congress and things, she's on her way to DC, we get a montage of her, like, looking at outfits in the mirror. And it's like, this is such a fucking cliche scene. It's remarkable it wasn't even in the first movie. Because that's exactly the kind of scene you would expect.
No, we just saw the crazy get-ups.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, just thought of another thing. You walk in, when we get to her office 6 months later and it's empty, we pan in, there's a little fucking dog bed by her desk with Brewster laying in it. I'm building this whole world here.
Yeah, honestly, even that, like, it's easy to get away from it because of the whole plot of the second movie. But, yeah, honestly, one of my favorite jokes in the first movie is the fact that her dog's name is Bruiser.
Yeah.
And it's just this like, that's just a good joke in itself. And you can forget how good that joke is when you hear his name so many times in the second movie. Literally, his name is a plot point.
Dude, if you want to use the dog in the plot, in my hypothetical movie, have her represent this rough mob boss guy because they kidnapped Bruiser.
Yeah, even that.
The dog could be the plot.
Yes, it sounds very 90s kids movie, but somehow it's better than Bruiser's Bill. So, I mean, I don't... Like, but what I imagined this being was, we were going to say, oh, this is why the first movie's so good, and then, oh, this is why the second movie wasn't up to par. And then it's like, a lot of it's just been like, God, the second movie dropped the ball so badly.
Oh man, I don't think it helps that I came in prepared with a whole story.
Yeah, and it's like, say what you will about IMDb ratings, they're not that reliable for the most part. But like I said, even as unreliable as they are, usually if something has over a 7, that's a good sign. And if something has a 5 or lower, usually that's not a great sign. And this has like a 4 or something. And it's like, that's, even by IMDb standards, that's not very good.
I think my idea could at least get a 6.
Yeah. It would have been like critics would have probably said about this one, like, yeah, it's not as good or as clever as the first one, but it's harmless. It's fine. And you could probably find jokes in it.
I probably wouldn't have scared Reese Witherspoon off of sequels.
Yeah. And it's like, and just, I don't know, just something about the vibe the second movie has, like, just when it starts.
It doesn't feel like it's in the same universe.
Yeah, like when she goes there and, poor James Urbaniak, who should be much more famous than he is the lab guy. He's the guy from, like, Henry Fool and stuff like that. He has a very entertaining Twitter account, I believe. And she's going here, she's running around, and she goes into an animal testing place, and it's like, it's been on for like 5 minutes, and you're just like, oh, what the hell is this? Well, I feel like we've already completely strayed off the path. And, yeah, so...
Dude, if I had the time to do videos, I would totally do a series where I fixed movie sequels.
That could be. I'm sure there's some random person that's already doing that, but I bet
they haven't tackled Legally Blonde.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't really... Ever since we started doing this, I don't really watch other movie YouTube channels.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's out there. But, yeah, so is that the gist of these? pretty much.
Pretty much. I'm kind of consumed in creating my own Legally Blonde too. Now I just have to think of the title. Maybe just Legally Blonde 2.
That or yours could even be like a soft reboot or something.
Oh man.
But yeah,
Maybe,
so
maybe. Or if you wanted to set it in present day, you could have maybe Elle retired early, and when they get Bruiser, it brings her out of retirement, and that's her motivation for coming back to law.
So instead,
and then you could Terminator it and just retcon the second one.
I was gonna say it would be the Top Gun Maverick of Legally Blonde movies.
Yeah, she could address it in one line and just be like, "Man, remember that dream where I passed that bill for Bruiser?" And Luke Wilson would be like, "Yeah, man," and it could go on.
I could even see Legally Blonde L being the title. All right, so does that cover that pretty much? I think the only thing I wrote down that I didn't mention was that I just like there's a background line that you can barely hear in the first movie that I like, where it's after he's broken up with her at the very beginning and she's like weeping publicly, and then his like excuses, he like turns everybody embarrassed and says like it was a bad salad, she had a bad salad, and then it's like as she's like leaving weeping, you hear somebody like a voice way in the background say, "I'm not ordering the salad." It's like when like lines are like that far in the background is something I always like also. So yeah, so I think usually this is where we say which movie we prefer, but I think we've been saying that the whole time.
Yeah.
And just
the first one, my hypothetical sequel, and then the second one.
Yeah, and then I think weren't there a couple of straight to video ones.
There's like a Legally Blondes.
Yeah, I never saw.
There's like 2 of them.
And I think it's a musical now.
I think it's probably going to be a Broadway musical if it's not already. But I think what boils down to is I think that Legally Blonde doesn't work without Reese Witherspoon being Elle.
Yeah.
She's charming enough to pull off the van. I don't think there's a lot of people that could have pulled that off.
Yeah, it's like that's like why we were saying the whole thing of if they should like reboot this or something, it's definitely got to be Elle Woods, played by Reese Witherspoon, still has to be the main character.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alright, so I don't really know where we are in the schedule. Oh, I think after this, we're going to have the reviews for Clerks 3, Honk for Jesus, and Marcella Shovel Shoes on.
Oh man, I've seen the previews for Honk for Jesus. Sterling K. Brown putting in work, man.
Both of them.
He looks really good in it.
He and Regina Hall are incredible.
You've seen him.
Yeah.
You've seen it. Oh man, it looked like it was going to be like. Is it in awards consideration? Does it qualify?
It qualifies, but I don't think the season's too packed, which sucks because I would put them both in.
Wow,
Yeah,
really?
Spoiler for when we do our lineups at the end of the year, but
Sterling K. Brown especially looks like he knocks it out of the freaking park.
Yeah, there's a scene that Regina Hall has towards the end that's like, it's scary how good she is.
Man, and we knew her as Brenda.
Yeah, I was thinking like the whole half of the time it's like this is where she's come, but at the same time her performance as Brenda is amazing too. So
yeah.
So
and we know Sterling K. Brown's good.
Yeah. So to make sure I can save all this for that video, I guess we can end this here, and we'll continue on with the remakes again, and we'll be finishing up the latter half of my William Hurt series, and then. Pretty soon it'll be October and it'll be all horror stuff, and that'll be really fun.
And comment if you're interested in sequel fixing videos. That might be something I consider. Yeah.
And speaking of you, we also have a Q&A and a movie club like within the next couple of days or a few days. By the time this goes out, it might be a couple of days. And then yeah, we'll continue on from there. So do you have anything to add?
No.
All right, then I think we're done here. I love ending it on the Larry David note. Yeah, I think we're done.
I knew that sounded familiar.